Hello, my name is Yosef, and today we're going to work on unseens in Module E. This lesson is for 4 and 5 points. Can you understand the main points made in informational texts? That's a big question. That's a global can-do statement that is something we're going to work toward being able to say, yes, I can. Here are 2 more of these can-dos. Can you identify information in newspaper reports and articles? In fact, most Module E bagruyot are based on articles. The next one, can you differentiate between main ideas and supporting details in factual texts? By the end of today's lesson, you're going to say yes to all 3 of these can-dos. Can you do it? Yes, you can. All right, we're going to go through the following steps. We're going to start with an overview of the whole E exam. We're going to set expectations. What will you see when you look in the exam? What are some useful words? Vocabulary is a very important part of success on these tests. And then we're going to look at how to find the answers in the test. All right, so the ebook route is 75 minutes long. It has an unseen, which is also called access to information from written text. That's 70 points, and that's the focus of today's lesson. There's also a listening comprehension, which is called access to information from spoken text. It's 30 points, and you hear the broadcast. It begins after 20 minutes. There are 6 questions worth 5 points each in that section, and there's a whole different lesson that you can watch about the listening comprehension. We'll talk a little bit about the timing, because when you sit down for your e-bagrut test, in 20 minutes, you're going to be interrupted with the listening. So we're going to try and balance our time and our work so that we can work in a way that's interruptible by that listening comprehension text. So when you look at the e-bagrut, what are the possible question types? There are 5 different types of questions that they can ask. The first is multiple choice. For those, they give you 1 question and 4 possible answers. Sometimes there's one question with 6 possibilities, of which 2 are right. But the instructions will be clear how many right answers there are, or how many you should choose. Those are multiple choice where the answer is already given. You just have to do a check or circle. Follow the instructions to know which. The next type are open-ended questions. Open-ended questions are questions where you come up with and write all the words of the answers. The next type, they sometimes give you a graphic organizer, some kind of a chart or a timeline, where they'll give you some of the information and you need to fill in the blanks. The 4th type is sentence completion. These can be the most difficult because they'll ask a question and give you the beginning of the answer. So you need to not only find the right answer, but match the grammar to the stem of the sentence that they give you. And the last, I haven't seen them very often, but once in a while you do get a true-false question where you need to copy words from the text that show why the answer is true or false. Those are the types of questions you could find on an E unseen. Here's some vocabulary that are common on all of the E's. You won't find all of these words on every test, but any of these words could be on any test. Let's go through. In the first column, you can see nouns. So all the words here are nouns. Research. The first word is research, and research can be a noun, it can be a verb. As a noun, it means the body of investigation. Someone started to do the verb form of research. They are trying to find something out. And the research is the asking questions and doing surveys and studies, trying to figure out what's happening. Study is another way to say research. When you study something, you're trying to learn about it. And that's the goal of research. So many times in the text, you'll see experts did a study on, and in the question they'll ask, what was the research about? So research and study are 2 nouns that mean looking into, trying to figure something out. Invention is a common word. Inventions are things that are made brand new. In fact, this clicker was an invention, the camera is an invention, computers, some of the things that we use every day at one point didn't exist and they were invented, created as new. Findings are what you find when you try to study something. It's a noun that stands for the knowledge that was gained by doing the research. Now, it may sound like there are lots of words here about research, and that's true, because many times they talk about research where you read a study that was done on a particular topic. And that's where they find the topics for the e-baguriot. Results, again, another word meaning what they learned from the research that they did. And information is the stuff that they know. Those nouns are things they can ask about. When you get to the adjectives, these are words that describe the nouns. So you could find something that talks about the latest research. That was the one that was done in the most recent, the next word, recent, in the past, but closest to now. So recent past are things that happened before, but close to now. And the latest, they did one 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 1 year ago, and the latest one was just published yesterday. You can also have innovative. An innovative invention is something that does something new, that they've tried to take something that they had before and make it even better. I've got a pen in my hand that I can use to write on your screen. That's not an ordinary pen. It won't do anything if I write on paper. So that was an innovation, taking something that already existed and making it different or better. Balanced is a word that describes something that is the same on both sides. Sometimes when you have a controversial issue, you want a balanced point of view. On the one hand, people say it's good. On the other hand, people say it's bad. Now, you don't know what my opinion is. I gave you a balanced view. Fascinating is something that's very interesting. I've heard a lot of students say there is nothing fascinating about the bagrut. But it doesn't matter if the topic is interesting or not. You still want to pass the test, don't you? Of course. It would be risky to try and get out of high school without having a bagrut. These days, there are a lot of things that are risky that we didn't think were before. When you take a risk, you take a chance that something dangerous or bad could happen. And if it's risky, maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't, but think twice about it. The next set of words in this list of very common words are verbs. Now, why is this list here on the screen? This list is here because these are words you should know. As you read the words, if you find some that you don't know, write them down right now. Write them down so that you can learn and practice them. In a couple of minutes, I'll show you a nice trick that you can use to practice and learn these words. But for now, let's go through the verbs. We've got research, we talked about that. Present, presenting your research, showing it to someone, introducing it to a group. To produce is when you make something. Consider, thinking about it. Provide is giving you what you need. And describe is to explain what there is. Other types of words. I put was first because often you'll have a question of when was this first introduced? Or when was it first introduced? Or something was researched first after something else. So in this case, first doesn't mean that there was a race and they came in first. It means the first time something happened. Certainly is something that's definite. Unfortunately is too bad. Consequently is a result of something else. And in order to makes it possible for whatever else happens. And here we are at the end of the list. Let's move on. This is a Frere square, and it's a really nice tool for learning vocabulary. You put the word you want to learn in the middle and translate it to your native language, give a definition of it in English, a picture that will jog your memory of what that is, and 1 or 2 sentences that help you to understand what it means. If you've made a card like this for each of the new words you want to learn, do it by hand because you'll remember better if you wrote it yourself, but then you could fold it and use it as a flashcard and sometimes look at your native language and guess the target word. Sometimes look at those sentences, try to remember the meaning, look at the definition. You can play with it in many different ways to help you learn the words. Now, you're probably ready to get started with the test. What you've got on the screen right here is a QR code. If you've got a QR reader on your phone, take it out and scan that code. It should come up with the words, "Thank you." This is a test to make sure that you've got a QR scanner. Some of the newer phones, you can use the camera function and it'll work as a QR scanner. Did you get the words "thank you"? Did it work for you? All right, then we're ready. This one, a little bit bigger and more complicated, this is actually a link to a PDF file of an actual old Buggeroot test. It's the test that we're going to go through today. It's the 2015 test that was Moed Bet. So hopefully you've had a chance to scan that, open the PDF, and you can follow along, make notes in your notebook and look at the questions and look at the text as we go through the process of how to solve this unseen. So when you sit down for your Buggeroot test, they'll give you a little booklet. The first thing I want you to do is read the instructions. Reading the instructions every time is important because if they change it just this once and you didn't reread the instructions, you could miss something important. Hopefully the instructions will be the same every time, easy to understand, and you move through them quickly. Next, read the title of the unseen and ask yourself, do I know anything about this? Don't skip this step because taking that moment to stop and think, do I know anything about the topic, gets your mind in the mood for reading about that topic. It gives you a chance to bring up ideas, visualize, and think of words connected to the topic. I suggest now, even though this lesson is about the unseen, that if you were just looking at the book for the first time, you would turn past the unseen to part 2 and read the instructions for the listening comprehension, and you would do the listening. I'm only going to spend a minute on this now. What you would do is read those questions, get yourself ready, so that after 20 minutes, when the time for listening happens, you're ready for that and come back to do the unseen. What do you see in the unseen? Well, there's a lot on this page. We've got part 1 that tells us we're in the access to information. It's 70 points like we talked about. Instructions, and here's the title, All About Chocolate. What do you know about chocolate? Probably that it's tasty. This one has a little bit more information. It's a review by Mark Nolan. That by shows that Mark Nolan is the person who wrote this particular article. Now let's jump into the first question. What do we learn from lines 1 to 11 about the books in the series? Now that gave us a lot of information. We've got books in a series. What's a series? It's a set of things in order. We know about series from television. We know about series from books that we've read. So we now know that the review is going to be at a book that's from a series. Put a check by the 2 correct answers. This is one that they're going to ask for 2. 2 of these are going to be right. If we read the options, we'll be able to know what to expect from the text. I want you to do this process. What the reviewer thinks of them. In this case, we have a pronoun, them. What does them stand for? It's the books in the series. So we might find what the reviewer thinks of the books in this series. Who the authors are. This would have to give us a couple of authors, at least 2, and they're the ones who wrote this book. what new facts they contain. The new facts they contain are the new facts in the book. What they have in common. Well, what the books in the series have in common is what you're going to have to be looking for. And how many there are. Remember, we're talking about books in a series. Also, which ones are more popular or the most popular. If you've got something that's the most, then you're going to want to find in the text some kind of comparison. They'll have to tell you about others. So that's what to expect in this question. We're going to do the same process for every question of reading the question and trying to predict what we'd find in the text. That'll give us a lot of clues and it'll be much easier to read the text. Here's question number 2. Remember, that's a complete the sentence. If they've given you the stem of the sentence, you're going to have to be careful about grammar, spelling, and the detail that gives you the answer. In this case, from lines 6 to 11, we learn about 2 different uses of. Even without reading the text, we know that what comes next is going to have to be a noun. And it's a singular noun. And it's something that there are multiple uses that we're going to learn from lines 1 to 6. The uses of means that there are things you can do with it, and that it is going to be the answer to our question. Question number 3 says, which of the following is a suitable title for lines 12 to 19? Now, we know the title of the whole thing was all about chocolate. In this case, they want to give a title just to lines 12 through 19. Well, we've got 4 possibilities, and we'll have to read those lines in order to see which one fits. What is the job that is referred to in line 18? We're going to be looking for some kind of a job in line 18, but although the word job is going to show up in line 18, that may not be where the answer is, because it's just going to be that they use line 18 to talk about that. That's going to be a reference to something that's probably earlier in the text. Question 5, what are we told in lines 12 to 16 about the chocolate drink? We're getting something new here. We've got a drink. And all 4 of these, are why. Why it was brought to Europe, why people drank it, why most people could not drink it, and why it did not spread. Be careful when you see why, because they're going to have to give you a reason. And often they'll mention all of these as facts. They may say when it was brought to Europe, or who brought it to Europe, or how it came to Europe. But if they don't give you some kind of a reason, that can't be the right answer. Question 6, in lines 20 to 25, better memory. Better memory is mentioned. Mentioned is similar to referred to, as an example of. When we say an example of, we're going to need a main idea here. This question is looking for a main idea. There may be other examples of that main idea, but we're not going to want to give those other examples here in question 6. Question 7, another complete the sentence. And this one's tricky because it's got a question and they gave you the beginning of the answer. What would have improved the chapter on scientific studies? And the answer is the chapter would have been better if it contained information about something. We're going to need to find that something in the text. Last question, we've got both. So while you're reading, check off which one of these show up in the 4th paragraph. If they don't show up in the 4th, don't even look for them in the 5th, because they couldn't possibly be the right answer. So now that we've gone over the questions, I'm going to skip a little bit of this and give you this QR code again. Make sure you've got a copy of this test in front of you, because when we come back after the break, we're going to look at the answers. All right, good luck. Welcome back. I'm Yosef, and we're going to continue looking at unseens in Module E for 4 and 5 points. During the break, hopefully you downloaded the test and got to take a look at what was going on in some of those questions and what was going on in the text itself. Some of the keys to success, in fact, the most important one is vocabulary. The more words you know, the more likely you are to do well on the test. Being prepared and being ready, knowing what to expect on the test, will help you feel more comfortable, relaxed, and let your brain do what it's been trained to do. Following the steps and doing the process that you've prepared will help you to stay focused and not to make mistakes. And I'm going to talk to you about proving your answers, about looking in the text to find exactly why the answer you chose is the right answer. Those 4 things are going to be your keys to success on Module E. Let's review the vocabulary. On each page where we had a question, I put a few of the words that you're going to want to know in order to be sure you get the right answer. As you're going through the test, if you don't know what a word means, you may want to look it up in the dictionary. But let me caution you first to read the whole question and read the paragraph to see if you need to understand. Sometimes the word is a noun and what you need to know is how something happened to it. So you don't necessarily need to know what the noun is. Sometimes it's an action, and if you need to know when, you don't really need to know what happened, you need to know when it happened. So read the whole question and the paragraph that the question is related to before you use the dictionary. Think about how much time it takes to look up a word in the dictionary. The average student takes between 40 and 60 seconds to look a word up in the dictionary. If you've got 75 minutes and you spend 1, 2, 3, 4, there are 20 words here that you might not know. Well, that's already a third of your test. So be careful, don't run to the dictionary. The other thing about dictionaries is once you find the word, there could be multiple definitions. Go back and look and see how it fits and see which one makes sense in the context. These are the words that we looked at the very beginning, words that are common to every unseen. Often you'll be about research. In the case of this particular one, this was about chocolate. It was about the history of chocolate. Somebody studied the history of chocolate. They talked about when it was invented. They talked about the latest uses. Maybe how chocolate was produced. So many of these words showed up in the text of that particular unseen. Did you see them when you were reading? Remember, this is our Freyer square that's going to help us looking up the words, helping us to learn new words. If we can learn all of these words using the Freyer square, we're going to be in really good shape for this test. The title here is Solve an Unseen. You may think this is a reading test and that you should read the whole thing first to get a good overview of what's going on. And that might help for you. That might work for you. But if you're pressed for time, keep in mind that the goal of the test is to find the right answers. Do you really want to know the history of chocolate? Maybe yes, maybe no. But you really do want to find the right answers. So if we want to focus on finding the answers, then we look at this as solving an unseen rather than reading a text and answering questions. That's my philosophy. When you're done, there's going to be an answer key, and someone from the ministry is going to go through and check your answers against this answer key. It's too small here, you can't read that. But we're going to go one by one through the questions and look not only at what the right answers are, but what were the lines in the text that helped us get there. Let's look at the first one. What do we learn from lines 1 to 11 about the books in the series? we learn what the reviewer thinks of them. And here's the line. Continues to bring us beautiful, highly informative books. Well, if the reviewer is going to tell us they're beautiful and highly informative, he thinks they're pretty good. But even if he told us they were terrible and boring, we'd still know what they thinks of them. The next one says who the authors are. And they did mention in paragraph 1 who the authors of this particular book about chocolate are. But remember that the question is about the books in the series. We don't know who the authors are to any of the other books in this series. What new facts they contain? Didn't say anything about new or old facts, just that there are. So we'd have to look at that adjective new. We didn't get something new here. What they have in common? Well, guess what? They do have a lot in common. In fact, he used the phrase, like the other books in the series. Whatever came after that is going to be something that's similar among all the books in that series. Did we get any numbers on how many books there were in the series? No. We know there are more. We got a few examples of some of the other ones, but we didn't actually get a number for how many are in the whole series. And which ones are the most popular? As we talked about before, if it's the most, we need it to be compared to something. The text did say this is a popular series, but it didn't say the one about chocolate is more popular than any of the others. So we didn't have a comparative. Question 2 we needed to fill in. And from lines 6 to 11, we learn about different uses of cacao seeds. Remember that we needed a noun here. We chose the seeds. Is that the only right answer? No, we could have written some of the other things. We could have written the seeds of the cacao tree. What we couldn't write is chocolate seeds. And the reason is because cacao seeds are used to make chocolate. That's one of the things that they're used for. They have other uses as well. In fact, we learned about 2 different uses of the seeds. We didn't learn about 2 uses of chocolate. Even though you might be able to think of a few, we have to base our answers on what's in the text. Question number 3. Chocolate in Europe today isn't the right answer because they talked about the chocolate bars we enjoy today. They didn't talk about them today in Europe. Many uses of chocolate. Well, not the many uses of chocolate. In the previous paragraph, we had many uses of cacao seeds, but in this paragraph, we only have the first use. It was first used to, so not many uses. The increasing value of chocolate. Interesting, because they did talk about high cost, and the high cost changed, but it didn't increase. It's now much cheaper. There are some vocabulary words you'd need to understand: increase and cheaper. Increase is a change, but it's a change to more, and cheaper is a comparative to less expensive. So this question was all about vocabulary and being able to rule out. Now, let me just ask you, while you were reading, if you knew that the first one was wrong, did you make your mark here or here? If you made it here, you've made a big mistake, because then it's going to be hard for the tester to figure out which answer you marked. So feel free to make as many marks as you want on the words or over next to, but don't write anything other than the circle of the right answer in this area where the numbers are. Okay? That's important. Question 4, another fill-in. This is an open answer. We don't have to match our grammar. We just have to find out what was that job that was referred to in line 18. Did you see that the word job was on line 18, but the answer was in line 16? Now, they talked about producing the powder. If you didn't actually use the word powder, if you had said chocolate or making cacao or something like that, but you didn't say powder, you lost 2 points because they wanted something very specific. They wanted turning the seeds to powder. but you could have said making chocolate or producing the powder. You could have used any of these other words to get that idea across. In question 5, the right answer is why most people could not drink it. Because even though within 100 years of being brought to Europe, the first place it landed was in Spain. However, only the rich could afford to buy it. If you've looked at some of the lessons on writing, we talk about these connector words helping to show the meaning. Here, however, shows us the contrast. Even though the use spread all over Europe, only the rich could afford to buy it. They're telling us that not everybody could drink it. Most people couldn't drink it because most people aren't rich. Too bad, huh? Question number 6. In lines 20 to 25, better memory is mentioned as an example of one of the benefits of eating chocolate. Your answer would be completely wrong if you don't include the word chocolate. But you could have written the benefits of chocolate, or what's good about chocolate, or what comes of eating chocolate. But you had to say chocolate. And here's the sentence that was in the text that gave us the answer. Studies of potential benefits of eating chocolate improve mood and memory. So better memory is one example, mood is the other example, and those are both part of the main idea of the benefits of eating chocolate. If they had asked the question, and sometimes they flip them around, and they had said, what is one example of a benefit of eating chocolate? Then you could write improved mood or better memory. Either would be right in that case. In question 7, we have the answer. The question is, what would have improved? And we've got would have improved. Present perfect. Conditional. This is looking back at something that can't be changed in the past. All right? What would have improved the chapter on scientific studies? The chapter would have been better if it contained information about. What do we need the information about? The risks of eating too much chocolate. So, in question 6, we had the benefits. And in question 7, we've got a criticism of not including the risks of eating too much chocolate. What were some of the risks mentioned? Yeah, people could get sick, people could get fat. Obesity is a real problem. And the studies, the research projects, do show that there are risks. Remember that you had to complete the sentence here. You had to match the grammar of your answer to the answer, the fact that you found in the story. In question number 8, what does the reviewer mention in both the 4th and 5th paragraphs? Readers' responses to the book. The readers' responses were mentioned in the 5th paragraph, but not in the 4th. Problems with the book? Yeah, we had unfortunately did not mention, and the information was too technical. In the 4th paragraph, we had no mention of the risks, and in the 5th paragraph, the information was too technical. So we had information that's not in the book was in paragraph 4, but we didn't have that in chapter 5. We had information that was too technical. What are the reasons he likes the book? We got that in paragraph 1, but not in the 4th paragraph. So we needed to be careful about finding things that showed up in both of these. Before you finish, when you think you're done, you want to look at a few things. You want to review your test. Check yourself. There's no bonus for finishing early. So you want to go through and very carefully look, did you actually answer all the questions? This is important because sometimes when you hit a question that you're not sure of, you think, okay, I'm stuck. I don't want to waste more time. I need to go to the other questions. This one's only 7 points, only 8 points. I'll come back to it. And then you finish question number 8 and you think, whew, I'm done. Please go back and check that you've actually put an answer on every question. Are all your marks clear? Remember I showed you that some people put those X's on the numbers? If you've done that and your marks aren't clear, you're not going to get the points. If the person reading your test can't tell what the right answer is, it doesn't matter how right you are. If it's not clear, you won't get the points. Make sure that if they ask for one example, that you've only written one thing. If you've written the word "and," you've probably written 2 examples. So be careful about that. If they ask for one, and usually when they do, they actually put it one all in capital letters so that you notice it, be careful that you only answer one. Sometimes, like on this example question 1, they ask you to mark 2 correct answers. I can't tell you how many times I've seen 3 check marks on those. Guess what? It doesn't matter if 2 of your 3 are right. One of them's wrong. You'll lose half the points at least. And if you've marked 2 wrong answers and 1 right answer, sorry, you don't get any of those points. So be careful that you've only marked 2 answers. And if, of course, you've only marked 1, then the other one has to be wrong. So make sure that you marked 2 where it asks for 2. Can you point to the lines that prove your answers? As we were going through those questions, I showed you exactly the lines in the text that showed me which answers were right or which ones were wrong. If you and I were arguing about the right answer, and I can prove to you, I can say, this line shows me that this is the right answer, it's got to be right. So sometimes it helps to imagine that you're having that discussion with your teacher. Excuse me, teacher, you marked this wrong. I think it's a mistake because in line 16, it clearly says this. Sometimes teachers make mistakes when they mark tests. So if you can prove it, you're probably right. Did you follow the STEM on questions with complete the sentence? This is important because even if you've got the right idea, if you missed on the grammar, you'll miss up to half the points. So be careful about that. Usually that's 2 points, but be careful on the grammar. Read the sentence and then put the right ending. Often you can think about what the answer could be before you know what it is from the text. And when you've planned ahead of time, remember we looked ahead of time in the last lesson, we looked at needing a noun for uses of something. When I read that, the uses of something came naturally. It felt like the right end of the sentence. I had to find a noun to put in place of that something. Also, today's lesson wasn't about the listening, but double check and make sure you've answered all the questions in the listening section. That's 30 points. It's the subject of a whole nother lesson that's important. But make sure before you say, I'm done with Module E, that you've finished the listening section too. Now we're reaching the end. Remember I told you at the beginning, we asked, can I? Well, now you can understand the main points made in informational text. If you could find the answers to those questions, you got the main points. Could you identify specific information in the newspaper report or article? That article could easily have shown up in the newspaper. There are lots of book reviews in the newspaper. So yes, we were able to identify information in the article. Could we differentiate between the main ideas and the supporting details in the factual text? Yes. Better memory was an example of a benefit of eating chocolate. Benefits of chocolate as a main idea, better memory, improved mood, those were our specific examples. So we can do these things. We can now say, yes, I can on all 3 of these. Keep up the great work and good luck on your Bagrut.